Shannon Martin, tonight the need is greater than ever as more people in our province rely on food banks. Advocates say it's reaching crisis levels.
I'm a user of the food bank since roughly February, end of February, right? That's when my debts were so high also. I just couldn't afford basically the TTC, right? I mean, so to come here, right?
The Daily Bread Food Bank says last month there was a record 200,000 plus client visits, more than triple pre-pandemic numbers. And
the brother was not just a statistic. He was a son, he was a brother, he was an uncle. Yet here we are 6 years since his murder, and there is no criminal accountability. There is no justice for his violent end.
6 years after their brother and son died in an Ontario jail, family members continue their calls for justice.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
It's donation day for CBC Toronto's Sounds of the Season. We'll take you to 2 community events collecting food and funds for local food banks.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Hello, thanks for joining us. Staggering. That's how advocates are describing the growing number of people turning to food banks in Ontario. Daily Bread Food Bank saying tonight it saw a record number of clients last month, and the need is only growing. Clara Pasica with our top story.
The Toronto Lords basketball team are busy sorting, packing, and taping boxes.
I just think it's really good that we're helping out the community with, say they need food, you need food to survive. And then it's also just a fun experience with your team.
Who can tape the boxes the fastest, who can pack the fastest, but yeah, it's been fun.
As volunteers find ways to create some fun, the reason they're here is never far from their hearts.
Thinking about all the people that are probably having a tough time picking up the basic needs, the breads, the grains, the basic things that you need just to survive with the inflation. I know that $100 of groceries doesn't go as far as it did even a year ago.
Fellow volunteer Michael Elbry is also now one of those users.
I think I'm a user of the food bank since roughly February, end of February, right? That's when my debts were so high also. I just couldn't afford basically the TTC, right? I mean, so to come here, right? And this was very tough.
Elbry learned others were doing the same.
Meanwhile, I learned that I'm not alone, right? I mean, there's other volunteers. They do the same thing, and I'm not really ashamed anymore, right?
Food Bank CEO Neil Hetherington says the needs have never been greater.
The need in the city is so dramatic. Before the pandemic, we were serving 60,000 clients every single month. This past month, it was 208,000 Torontonians who had to make use of a food bank.
Bigger solutions are what Hetherington really hopes for.
Ultimately, we need to make sure that we are providing income supports and decent affordable housing across the country so that no one needs to turn to a food bank.
80,000 Torontonians turned to food banks for the first time this past year. Until sustainable solutions occur, Hetherington says to all struggling,
we make it as low barrier as possible for them coming into a food bank. We will welcome you. We'll walk alongside that journey with you. We'll make sure you get the food that you need.
The Toronto Lords have a message for those receiving food this holiday season.
Have a good Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate.
Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
In other news tonight, family, friends, and supporters are gathering to remember a young man who died in an Ontario jail. It was 6 years ago, and they've been fighting for justice ever since. Tyler Cheese spoke with the family earlier today. They say they're not only fighting for their brother, but other people living with mental illness who are currently behind bars.
My brother was not just a statistic. He was a son, he was a brother, he was an uncle. Yet here we are 6 years since his murder, and there is no criminal accountability. There is no justice for his violent end.
In December 2016, Soliman Fakiri, a 30-year-old man with schizophrenia, died following an altercation at the correctional facility where he lived.
Soliman was beaten to death by several guards at the Central East. 50 bruises, legs and hands tied, pepper sprayed twice.
The forensic pathologist later determined the guards' actions directly contributed to Fakiri's death. Yet this past August, his family heard for the third time that no charges would be laid. Fakiri was scheduled to be moved to a mental health facility just days after his death.
Instead, he lost his life.
Tonight, to mark the anniversary of his death, Fakuri's family is holding a vigil to remember him and to call for changes to the justice system. Experts say the existing system punishes those with disabilities.
Oftentimes, behavior is seen as dangerous when really the people who are having their disabilities weaponized against them are being warehoused in places like prisons, in places like long-term care homes, when they should be supported. And so we have situations where people end up in these institutions that don't actually support recovery from various forms of disability.
They're calling for a restorative system rather than a punitive one.
We've done a bit of reading about a couple of prison examples in Norway, and they basically build relationships with the people there in order to rehabilitate them and offer them opportunities to attend genuine programming that's culturally specific. And the recidivism rate is dramatically lower.
In a joint statement, 5 Canadian senators are also showing support to the Fakuri family, writing, "The criminalization of individuals who suffer from mental illness is of national concern. More needs to be done to ensure adequate and appropriate mental health care and supports are available in all communities." As for Fakuri's brother, he's pledged to continue fighting for justice.
It's to shed light for other Canadians who have also suffered from this system. And this vigil is as much about them as it is for my late brother.
He says they will continue holding the vigil annually for as long as they have to. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, Toronto police have arrested a man in connection with 2 random attacks on the subway. 25-year-old Brendan Sevilla Zelaya has been charged with 3 counts, including robbery. He is accused of attacking 2 passengers earlier this week, punching one man unprovoked, and shaking a woman also unprovoked. Police say it happened Thursday on board a subway train at Kennedy Station. To a story parents with little ones are watching very closely tonight. 2 children in Montreal have died of complications related to strep A infection. Neil Herlin is tracking this one for us. He has more on the symptoms parents should be watching out for.
Montreal Public Health is warning doctors and clinicians to be vigilant after 2 children have died and 2 more tested positive for strep A since mid-November. Invasive group strep A is a contagious bacterial infection, and these 4 cases were all in children aged 2 and under. None of them had an underlying chronic health condition or a recent case of chickenpox. So what is invasive group A streptococcus? These are bacteria that live in the throat and the skin. Most are harmless. It can cause an infection in the back of your throat, known as strep throat. Most of us have probably heard of that one, but it can also cause more serious illness, including streptococcal toxic shock syndrome and necrotizing fasciitis, or flesh-eating disease, as well as meningitis. The treatment is typically a penicillin-type antibiotic, but doctors say there are preventative things that parents can do, especially getting your child the flu vaccine.
We know that group A streptococcal infections and other bacterial infections are more common after viral infections. And of course, we're in the midst of a very large respiratory viral season with RSV, with influenza, and of course, COVID-19 has not gone away. Is this strep that we're seeing now related to that? It's not entirely clear, but no one would be surprised if it was.
Experts say if a child has recently had a viral illness like the flu, parents should watch for more severe symptoms for about a week after the flu symptoms begin. These are symptoms that are worse than a regular runny nose or a cough. They include trouble breathing, fever, significant change in personality, fatigue, stiff neck, a full body rash, and not being able to drink. And finally, if a kid stops urinating, if you see these symptoms, get to a doctor or an emergency room.
That's Neil Herlin reporting for us. Well, it is the busiest time of year for many businesses. For small business, the holidays are often a make or break season. That's why shops along Dundas West were so upset when road closures were put in place last month to fix an unexpected large hole found under TTC tracks. Today, Mayor Tory offered his support.
Main streets in our neighborhoods are hugely important to the health of the city. If you think about all those shops, if they just weren't here, how much that would reduce life in these neighborhoods. But it's been 2 or 3 years in a row at this time of year when they normally make most of their money that they've really suffered a hardship. And so the councillor and myself and the BIA, we've all worked together to try to, promote the main streets, but also to get things like this fixed as quickly as we can.
Mayor Tory says the repair work should wrap up early next week, much earlier than the original timeline of January. The city has partnered with the local BIA to help businesses get through. In the meantime, he's urging residents to continue supporting local businesses that remain open through construction. It was delivery day for 42 Division with Toronto Police. They've been collecting toys since last month as part of their annual drive. Officers loading TTC buses with all the toys they've collected. They were later dropped off at shelters and homes in Scarborough. The event started back in 1994 and has supported families and children in need over the holidays ever since. Kabir Bagaria is here with us tonight. For anyone doing some last-minute shopping, Kabir, it was kind of chilly out there today.
It is chilly, but Shannon, as we go into shopping, we're talking a bit about money, so I have to ask you, all right, where do snowmen keep their money?
I don't know.
In a snowbank.
I was going to say a pocket, but that doesn't make sense. A snowbank, yes, of course. It was right there, Kabir.
That's okay. Okay, I'll do what I'm better at, which is telling you about the weather. It's chilly, you're right. And we're looking at that really, really chilly pattern continuing over for much of western portions of the nation. You can see that reflected here in our overnight temperatures for the prairies, but I wanted to start out in Atlantic Canada, where we're going to be seeing some snowfall that's going to be impacting us in New Brunswick, parts of Nova Scotia and the Gaspé, in addition to a bit of a rain-snow mix. How much snow could we be seeing through our Tuesday? Well, 15 to 20 centimeters for central parts of New Brunswick, in addition to parts of the Cape Breton Highlands. Really and truly, this is not going to see quite as much accumulation as one would think, and that's just because the temperatures will be hovering around or above the freezing mark. For those of us in central Ontario and southern Ontario, we could be seeing a bit of that snow coming off of Huron shores as well. Central portions, or rather the Golden Horseshoe, is not going to see a huge accumulation of this, but if you're off of Lake Huron shores around Goderich, you're going to be seeing the potential for a bit of a buildup here. Temperatures sitting around 0 for our day tomorrow, and snowfall as well impacting us for parts of the prairies. Frigid temperatures overnight, folks. Be careful if you're going outside. Metro Vancouver is sitting for a daytime high tomorrow of about 0 degrees. Minus 21, though, for tomorrow for Calgary. So be ready for some chilly temperatures coming your way for that region, of course.
A snowbank. Oh, I'm going to tell that to my 4-year-old tonight. Thanks, Kabir. We'll see you a little later.
See you.
Developing news from Hockey Canada tonight. A new board of directors has now been elected. The previous board resigned in October. The mass resignation followed intense criticism of the organization's handling of sexual assault cases and payments to victims. Ithel Musa has more now on the new board members.
5 women and 4 men have been elected to Hockey Canada's board of directors, a diverse group of individuals with a wide range of expertise, tasked with helping to turn things around at the organization after its handling of sexual assault allegations.
Well, there are a number of challenges. We have to work on restoring trust.
Hugh Fraser is the organization's new board chair. He's a former Olympic sprinter and a retired Ontario judge.
One of the other priorities that I have is to ensure that everyone understands that they will be treated fairly, that they will be accountable. We're going to have due process.
Joining Fraser on Hockey Canada's new board is Marian Jacko. Jacko has devoted her legal career to working on behalf of children and Indigenous peoples. She is also the president of the Little Native Hockey League. Cassie Campbell-Pascal is also a new board member at Hockey Canada. The 3-time Olympic medalist helped Canada's women's hockey team secure 2 consecutive gold wins at the Olympic Games in 2002 and 2006. There is growing hope that she and the rest of the new board will usher in an improved culture at Hockey Canada and much-needed transparency. In a statement to CBC, Sport Minister Pascal Saint-Onge wrote in part, "The health of our national sports organizations starts with good governance, and I think this is a good way to start over for Hockey Canada. We will continue monitoring for concrete actions that the new board will take." But experts say while changing the organization's culture is necessary, it will not be easy.
That kind of rink level culture is very alive and well in Canada, whether it's about misogyny, violence against women, racism.
Hockey Canada says all players, coaches and staff on Team Canada have completed mandatory training on sexual violence and consent. The organization also says there will be increased supervision of players, coaches and staff at the 2023 World Junior Championship in Halifax and Moncton later this month. And there will be a zero tolerance policy for all acts of harassment, discrimination, racism and sexual violence. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Also developing tonight, an 18-year-old junior hockey player has died. His death now under investigation. Abakar Kuzbevkov played with the Ontario Hockey League's London Knights. The team has postponed tonight's game. The cause of his death has not yet been revealed. Former Liberal Cabinet Minister Jim Carr has been honored at a memorial service in Winnipeg.
He made me feel so special, that he had special attention for me. And then this week I discovered it wasn't just me, it was everyone. I felt less special.
Carr died on Monday after a long battle with cancer. He served in the Manitoba legislature and the federal cabinet. Former colleagues, community leaders, and friends filled Winnipeg Centennial Concert Hall to say a final farewell. His funeral took place on Wednesday. Jim Carr was 71. Such a great day. Okay, here's a look just outside Eaton Centre tonight. A busy weekend for shoppers. Everybody trying to squeeze in some shopping on the final weekend before Christmas. If you're keeping count, it's just 7 sleeps to go. Kabir's back, and I know that because of the chocolate calendar that we do every morning at home. Such a fun time. Yeah.
Okay, Shannon, one more time. Here we go, because I'm going to give you one more. All right. So, did you hear about the snowman spy? He had a license to chill.
Oh, that's good.
Better?
You know?
Worse?
No, I just love them all. Keep them coming.
Well, thanks for bearing with me. Let's talk a bit about the weather. And you can see here I have a map of the entire eastern part of the nation. And that's because for those of us in the Golden Horseshoe in southern Ontario, we'll be feeling the effects of a pretty widespread system here that's impacting us all the way up the St. Lawrence. And of course, we're going to focus in here on how this is going to affect us in southern Ontario. But first, I wanted to give you some context. We're going to be seeing a bit of the snowfall impacting parts of the Atlantic region. Specifically as well, let's talk a bit about southern Ontario. How is this going to impact the start of your week, or the middle of your weekend rather. So through our overnight periods, we're going to be seeing this wind coming in from the west, heading eastbound. We're going to see it impacting mostly off of Lake Huron shorelines and of course around the Lake Simcoe area. But really and truly, we're not looking at very much accumulation. You're going to be seeing this mostly in the form of blowing snow, even in a rain-snow mix, as our temperatures will remain around the freezing mark. So for now, we're going to be seeing 15 to 20 centimeters around the Goderich area. As I mentioned, Collingwood could be seeing a little bit of this. Maybe we could be getting a bit of this to build the snowpack, but again, we're not looking at frigid temperatures to help support this. Now, of course, as we do take our way to look at our temperatures for today and for tomorrow, we're hovering at 0. Anticipate a bit of this snow going into your day tomorrow. Not a total washout, but it's going to be that wet, slushy kind of snow for you. So something to think about going into your Sunday.
All the weather we need to know, plus some laughs too. Thanks so much, Kabir.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for you this Saturday night. Thanks for watching. But before we go, we have to take a look at the Bentway today. The skating trail under the Gardiner is open once again as the 5th winter season officially kicks off. This year, organizers have an exciting program planned for the coming months.
At the core of our season here, we have an exhibition by Shelley Zhang called Beacons, which is a light installation that is going to be here for the entire season. And then in January and February, we have some newcomer-specific programming. So we're celebrating the diverse communities here in the city, and we'll be doing some programming for our newcomer residents here, such as a communal dinner. We've got newcomer skating lessons. We'll be doing a concert, as well as an Indigenous knowledge-keeping workshop.
Programming will run through Family Day. That's it for us. We'll see you again tomorrow night.